good morning, good evening, whenever this video finds you. This is the Gen 4 tips and tricks run. So, I will quickly be going over the guys that I would recommend. Anybody that I don't recommend, I will just tell you. Turtwig, Chimchar, Piplup, really good. Out of these three, if you had to pick one, I think Piplup, because if you go to the Elite Four very quickly, Aaron is a bug type, so you're not going to have a bad matchup, you're going to have a neutral matchup. And if you evolve it into Empoleon, you're going to be Steel, so you're probably going to resist all these moves anyways, which makes him good against Aaron, lets you get some X items and sweep. Bertha, the ground type, you're super effective. You are Steel type, so just be wary of anything outspeeds you. Get an X item and make sure you KO everything in the back. And maybe run with a flying type so that none of the ground moves hit you. This guy's Fire, so obviously Empoleon is going to be really good in the Water type. It normally would resist if it was a pure Water type, however, it is not. It's a Water Steel, so just be wary of this Infernape and maybe the Lopunny if it Mega Evolves. And then Lucian. Steel resists Psychic, so you're probably going to have a pretty good time there, and most of these Mons are special attackers. Empoleon is a special defensive wall. I'd probably recommend Piplup the most out of these, just for the Elite Four, because I do like building with the end game in mind, but you cannot get to the end game if you cannot get to the early game, so that's pretty obvious. Chimchar has Beast Boost. I normally wouldn't have recommended this guy, but Beast Boost will probably carry, and I recommend it with the Adamant Nature. It's probably fast enough to outspeed anything with the Adamant Nature, and your max IVs at 31 or 30, whatever they're at. And Beast Boost is just going to make it so you have a very, very easy time sweeping the rest. I love Turtwig. Thick Fat helps takes care of some of its weaknesses. Starly is just probably the best flying type you're going to find in this generation. Normal flying with the passive Rockhead. Make sure that Flare Blitz and Brave Bird are not going to give you any recoil, and they're insanely strong moves. Would recommend Starly. If you want to bring Bidoof, make sure you get its passive and the simple ability, and then pair it with Shellos. The reason that is because Shellos evolves into a Water Ground type, 4 times Grass weakness. With Sap Sipper, you get an immunity to the grass types, and your attack raises by 1. With Simple, it's going to be an attack raised by 2, and with the Egg move, Extreme Speed and Stab, you're going to be hitting pretty hard. So I would recommend these guys as a pair, which is something I normally never do, but I would recommend them. I cannot recommend Kricketot, kind of bad, even though the Blue Shiny looks very cool. Even with the passive, it's just not good. Shinx is probably the best electric type you can bring. Intimidate is insanely strong. Speed Boost makes up for its really lackluster speed. And if you're going to bring any other electric type, I would recommend Rotom, because electric, it's an electric mon with ability Levitate, so its one weakness in ground is no longer a weakness and now an immunity. Very strong. Budew, pretty good grass type, a little faster than Torterra if you want something a little more offensive. Also rocking the poison type with Sludge Wave or Sludge Bomb to get those poisons in there. Passive in Grassy Surge to help you strengthen your grass moves and get a little recovery at the end of the turn. Cranidos. I normally don't recommend fossils. I think this guy is going to be insane with its, I think it's at like a 165 or 170 attack stat once it evolves. And with the passive Rockhead, that's Rampardos' biggest downfall, is that it's insanely strong, but it's really slow. Pair this guy with an X speed and Rockhead, and you probably have a sweeper on your team. Now, for Baneri, I'll go over the legendaries very quick because 4 of them get forms. Obviously, any of the legendaries can always carry you, so it does not matter. But I want to go over the Mega Evolutions, because Gen 4 does have some really good Mega Evolutions. Mega Lopunny is probably the best of the best in these Gen 4 Mega Evolutions, because it is a normal fighting type. It gets the extra typing once it evolves. It gets Scrappy, which makes it so normally you'd be walled by a ghost type with your normal or fighting type moves. Scrappy makes it so you can hit ghost types with normal or fighting type moves, and Scrappy makes it so you cannot get intimidated. Lopunny is one of the 3 that I recommend you bringing, because it gets a Mega, it's insane ability. Mega Garchomp, only pair this guy, or only bring this guy if you have its passive. Mega Garchomp is actually slower than Garchomp when it Mega Evolves, so keep that in mind. Maybe bring an X Speed, because it's insanely strong and a lot bulkier once it Mega Evolves. And its passive is Sandstream, so with Sand Force, and you have Sandstream up, you have the Sandstorm going. I believe it raises ground, steel, and rock type moves by like 1.2 or 1.3. So if you're bringing Garchomp, just get the passive on it, and it'll probably do pretty good for you. Mega Lucario, I love this guy. Adaptability is insane with some of the egg moves. Double Iron Bash is the rare egg move. That's the one you normally want to shoot for. And if not, you get Bullet Punch as a priority, and adaptability is a really strong one. Mega Obama Snow gets Snow Warning, and its passive is Thick Fat. So the 4 times fire weakness is only cut down to 2. But just keep in mind, obviously, what this guy's weaknesses are, and what any Pokemon's weaknesses and strengths are, so you don't run into the issue of, man, I didn't think that thing was going to KO, I forgot that was super effective, things like that. Just, you know, be aware. Mega Gallade, I think it's pretty good. It's also another Mega you could bring, but you do have to bring Ralts from Gen 3 first, and then make sure you evolve into a Gallade and not a Gardevoir, or else it's going to be completely useless on your run. With the Megas out of the way, Drifloon is not bad. There's probably just a better, I think honestly the better Ghost type and the better Flying types are Starly and Rotom respectively. Shellos I would pair with Bidoof, and normally I don't pair Mons, but they just seem to work off each other really very well. Shellos evolving into a Water Ground type, getting Regenerator and Storm Drain. Storm Drain gives you a Water immunity. You could also pair this guy, I guess, with Chimchar if you wanted to, but Shellos is one of those guys that doesn't have great stats, but it's bulky enough and strong enough to KO things and live hits that it normally just shouldn't. This guy sucks, wouldn't recommend, even if it's evolved, and has 25 X items. Buizel, passive in Moxie, makes sure every time it KOs him on, it raises its attack stat. And Swift Swim, if you have the map item, you want to make sure you try to hitting those water areas all the time, because with Supercell Slam, you're going to have something super effective against the waters, and you're going to be double speed. Nothing's going to be outspeeding you, probably even with a +1. There's a better Electric type, his name is Rotom. This might have a niche use because its passive is Intimidate, and it's got King Shield along with Victory Dance. Probably a niche use, wouldn't recommend on your first challenge run. Burmy, same thing, wouldn't recommend on your first challenge run. Shieldon is bad. The only way that you would use Burmy is if you got its passive along in Sturdy and were rocking the Trash Cloak form, which depends on which biome you evolve into. This thing can evolve into 3 different types. It shares, it's like Bug, Steel, and the other guys I don't even remember because they're just kind of that bad. Glameow, not recommending. Starly is a better normal type. You can bring this guy, but you cannot evolve him, so I would not recommend. Stunky, I think there's better poisons and better dark types in the gen, namely in Scorpy and Krogunk, and I'll go over those. Bronzor, I want him to be good in PokeRogue. Not that good, but is a pretty good wall if you want a wall. Also gets the ability Levitate and Heatproof, so it takes a little bit less damage from Fire-type moves, which are super effective against it, but is normally a wall. You can bring it if you want somebody else on your team, or just be aware that you can catch this guy in the wild. Cannot bring, cannot bring, cannot bring. If you do, you cannot evolve them. Chatot, sorry, you're literally outclassed by Starly. Spiritomb is too slow for me, and if you're bringing a Ghost type, I think that Rotom is probably the better one, but you can bring this guy. I am not going to not recommend him, but for 5 cost, just know how you're going to use him. He's a lot bulkier. You're probably not going to set up. He's probably going to weaken things for the rest of the team in the back to come and clean up. That's what I would use him for. Cannot bring because you cannot evolve it. This guy sucks. Better water types in Piplup and Empoleon. Carnivine, not bringing. Better grass types in literally the starter. Krogunk, I do like. Ability, Dry Skin, makes it a water immunity, and you gain some HP back if you get hit by a water move. Just be aware that if you have a fire move, it's going to do more damage than normal and probably KO you. Its stats are very mediocre, but with passive and Moxie, this guy's going to sweep, has the potential, get some egg moves on it, is really good. Scorpy, I'd only run it if you have Sniper and the passive Super Luck unlocked. It's strong, but not too strong. It's fast, not too fast, and it's bulky on the defensive side with a decent typing in Poison Dark once it evolves. Not the best, but you could bring him if he's one of your favorites. With the Hippo, I think I would recommend this guy because there's not too many other great ground types, and he sets up the Sand, which is awesome. Very bulky as well, so just make sure if you're bringing this guy, look out for special attacks, water moves, and maybe pair him with Piplup, because Piplup I cannot recommend enough. Riolu, went over him briefly. Double Iron Bash, really strong. Passive Mind's Eye is basically scrappy, but you cannot lower accuracy. You can hit Ghost type moves, pretty good. Can bring this guy, cannot evolve him. If you bring Gibble, just get the passive on it before you bring him. Or if you bring him just because you want a Garchomp, go ahead. Pretty good, it's a pseudo-legendary for a reason. Snover, I went over very briefly. Thick Fat, passive is probably the only way to bring it, unless you want to pair it with Heatran, who has Flash Fire, so your 4 times weakness will actually strengthen Heatran's fire type moves. Rotom, Electric Ghost, it has 4 different forms: Electric Ice, Electric Grass, Electric Water, and Electric one of the other guys who I cannot remember. But it does lose its Ghost typing, but it's very strong in the fact that it's an Electric type with Levitate. All the legendaries and stuff are pretty strong. I don't want to touch on them too much. If you're bringing them, they're probably enough to sweep. If you want to bring any of the Lake Trio, I'd recommend Azelf. It's the fastest and strongest hitting of all them. If you want to go bulky, go Oopsie. If you want something in the middle for some reason, bring Mesprit. Form, really strong. You might not have it with Torch Strong. It's insane because that raises special attack by 1. Regigigas, I very quickly want to touch on this guy, and if not, you can go check out my Gen 4 video because, yeah, I actually did a Gen 4 challenge run with Regigigas, and he carried. He was actually really strong. Once you get past those 5 turns, his speed and attack really shine through. This is the creator of all Pokemon. Obviously, yeah, he's going to be very strong, and his ability is finally in the game, so once you play with him, you can get the plates to make him a ground, or a mono ice, or, you know, a different type besides normal. And adaptability stacks on top of that, making him really strong. Get some insane egg moves in Quiver Dance, Collision Course, Victory Dance, and Spectral Thief. You can make him a special attacker or physical attacker. Shaman is basically Jirachi plus, because once it gets its form change with the Gracidia Flower, it turns into a Grass Flying with Serene Grace and Air Slash, which gives you a 60% chance to flinch. And it's a lot stronger and a lot faster than regular Shaman form. Darkrai is probably the best Dark type in Generation. I would go with Timid. It has, make sure you get the egg move Moonblast on it. That gives it really good coverage with its normal move upset. These are basically the same thing. If you're tight on points for the starting cost, just bring Fion, and if not, bring Manaphy. Manaphy's enough to carry you. We recommend Modest or Timid if you want to outspeed things. Modest for a lot more damage, Timid for speed. Cresselia kind of sucks, very bulky, don't like it. And Giratina is just a Ghost Dragon. The best Ghost in the game, best Ghost in the Gen, probably not the best Dragon in the Gen, that's probably up for debate. And also gets a form change. But I will now quickly go over the Elite Four and why. My top 3 are Empoleon, Baneri, and Riolu. I think a Fairy type pretty much sweeps her team. Yeah, a strong Fairy type sweeps a team. Spiritomb's weak, Mega Garchomp's weak and slower. This thing sometimes can be Mega'd and Terra'd into a Dragon or a Ground type, bring an Ice type, and it's probably going to be really good. Once again, Empoleon covering that Ice type, or the Mega Lucario with Triple Axle will KO all these guys. I've never ran into this thing with its alternate form, but I have ran into it being Terra'd. Same thing with Lucario, it loses its Steel typing and it has been terrestrialized into the Fighting type. Togekiss, as much as I like Togekiss, it's slower and Empoleon pretty much walls it. This thing cannot really do much against Empoleon except for an Aura Sphere, but since it's not Stab, Togekiss is not that strong, and Empoleon's bulky, you're probably going to win. And that pretty much does it for this team run. Empoleon, Starly, Shellos is pretty good, and then obviously Baneri and Riolu for the Megas. If you've enjoyed this, drop a like, drop a sub. I'll be back with Gen 5 tomorrow. Thank you very much. Take care. Have a good day.